The Trump White House is having congressional Republicans in Texas try to squeeze an additional 5 seats as we head towards the midterms. Will this work? Ryan Girdusky explains in under 60 seconds.
To get 2 was easy. I could have done 2 with a crayon and one of those placemats you see at a diner. The thing about doing 5 is that you really have to bet that the Latino vote is not going to have a recession for Republican support the way that it had in several other elections. And you have to hope that the new kind of baseline for Latino support in Texas is around 45 to close to 50%. That's a big, big bet.
All right, guys, it is Friday. We have made it through the work week. A lot of big things happening this week. Trade deals, great GDP numbers. I mean, heck, a lot of great stuff. President got back from his overseas trip. And let's just break it all down. I want to get the latest polling numbers. Jim McLaughlin, the president's pollster, is here. That's going to be awesome. And then Ryan Girdusky is going to be here to talk about the latest on redistricting as they try to get more seats out of Texas in particular and other states. We will give you the latest. You will sound so smart this weekend. Trust me, if you're a political junkie, this show is for you. Next week, by the way, Monday, Harmeet Dillon. Tuesday, Todd Lyons, acting ICE director. Thursday, an amazing panel. And Friday, Tyler Pager for the New York Times talks about that new Biden book that's out. By the way, do me a huge favor. If you got a second over the weekend, go to Spotify and Apple. I love everyone who's in the YouTube chat, by the way, or Rumble. I love it. But Spotify and Apple, hit the audio 5-star review. It just would mean a lot to me. 2 seconds, please, just this weekend. All right, before we get to Jim McLaughlin, though, you guys, I've told you this. This has been like a big thing over the weekend where I'm cooking the eggs and the steaks and all that kind of stuff. Well, I have added Firecracker Farm hot salt to all this stuff. It is unreal. It is like the biggest kick in your mouth. It's this powerful flavor burst. It's not hot. It's unbelievably flavorful in a way that I've never tasted before because they use 3 unbelievable types of pepper: Ghost, Reaper, and Scorpion. Yeah. You get the drift. They are called the 3 Kings. And this stuff is so popular. Megyn Kelly's talked about it. Joe Rogan's talked about it. It's sold out for the longest time. You couldn't get this stuff after Father's Day because everybody wanted to get it. They've now kind of restocked some of the small batch limited edition versions. So you can get this now for a limited time. And like it comes with this grinder and you just click on the top, not like you don't twist it. You literally take the top, push it down, goes right onto, your eggs, your vegetables, whatever you like. Go to firecracker.farm, not .org, not .com, .farm, firecracker.farm. Use code SPICER for a discount just for our show listeners and watchers. Firecracker.farm. Use code SPICER for a discount and thank me later. Speaking of what to put it on, you guys know on the weekends I love these steaks. I've been putting all this stuff, all that Firecracker Farm on my steaks, but the steaks are standalone. These things from Riverbend Ranch are like nothing I've ever had. I'm a steak snob. I like cooking them and grilling them. I've had them from all different places. I love going out on somebody else's dime and getting a good steak at some really nice steakhouses. I've never had anything like the Riverbend Ranch steaks. I've had the ribeye, the filet medallion, the strip. You guys know, if you're watching the show, you know I love the hot dogs. Last week it was the steak tips. I love the beef jerky. This stuff is just, it's aged for 21 days. It has none of that antibiotics or growth hormone stuff. You can't get it in a grocery store. You cannot get it anywhere else. It literally comes from the ranches that they have in Montana and Wyoming. And over the last 35 years, they have perfected the tenderness and the marbleness. It's like nothing you've ever tasted. I'm telling you, everybody at my table says, my family, they're like, where did you get these? And like I said, you can only get it delivered to your house straight from the ranch. Go to riverbendranch.com, riverbendranch.com. Use promo code Sean, SEAN, to get $20 off your first order. And trust me, I'm a big fan of these packages that they have. So check those things out. All right, before I bring in Jim McLaughlin, the president's poster, I want to give a big shout out to Teresa Taylor 5458 for her comment after Wednesday's show on windmills. She definitely brought it home. Stop building these stupid windmills in Texas, please. I agree with you, but stop building them everywhere, Teresa. Thanks for the comment. I love giving you guys a shout out. Plus, by the way, I've mentioned this before. Every weekend we do a rant, something that doesn't fit in the show. That's why you want to hit that subscribe and notification button so you always know. All right, without further ado, the president's pollster, Jim McLaughlin. Jim, welcome back. As we get ready for the weekend, I want to break down the latest McLaughlin brother polling here because you guys scratched an itch that I've been wondering about. And this is like, this week was emblematic of it. Okay. And here's what I mean by this. The president just crushed it on trade. Okay. Deal. GDP comes out ahead of forecast, 3% growth, right? Much more than people thought. We had June, the first time in a decade that the government ran a surplus. Okay. In any other world, Jim McLaughlin, this would have been like one of those things would have been a big deal. And yet I look at the polling that I see mostly from the media polling, okay, not the McLaughlin brother polling. And I go, what the heck? Like, why is it like any other president would be getting this massive bump, like coming out of a convention? So what is the latest McLaughlin polling from this month reveal about why President Trump's not getting the bump that I would assume he should be?
Sean, I love how you frame that question. And first of all, by the way, on that survey, President Trump had a 52% approval rating. So a majority of Americans are saying, hey, he's doing a good job. And your point, one of the things that we asked is, okay, where are folks getting their information from? And what we found is it's kind of like about a third of the country is getting it from left-wing sources, which, by the way, used to be a lot higher than that because, they were getting it from NBC News, CBS, and et cetera. Then you've got another third that are getting it almost from Fox News, Newsmax, basically the Sean Spicer show. That's where they're getting their information.
Everybody's getting it from there, Jim. We got it.
And then some, some. And then you've got another third of the country that is kind of, a pox on both their houses. And they're trying to get their news and information, basically online. They're going into their own little bubble. But that's the key. And I think what the White House has done a great job, obviously Caroline Leavitt and President Trump, is that's why they go out there and try to speak over the heads of the media every day. Now, it's hard. It's hard because, President Trump will be delivering good news and you'll have CNN and CBS News, et cetera. They all cut away from it. But that's the challenge for Republicans because your point, could you imagine, you think about what President Trump has done over the last week. We've got a 3% GDP rate. We see inflation is coming down. You look at, you look at these tariffs that the media was telling us was going to put us into recession. And now we're finding he's getting all these great deals for America and more investment into America. And yet the media is trying to poo-poo all that. So that's the challenge. That's what we're dealing with.
Okay, so let's kind of break these down maybe by segment. So if you are someone who wakes up and watches the Today Show and the NBC Evening News and reads the Washington Post or the New York Times, is it your conclusion that person just is not going to vote for Trump? Is it because that's where they're getting their information, or is it because the information's tending them, or don't we know? In other words, it's which, sometimes what is it, the cart before or chicken and egg? Like which one came? Yep. Is it the media causing it, or are they self-selecting media that agrees with their point of view, or do we not know?
They are selecting their media based off of that. Look, They're looking to go to MSNBC, et cetera, all the other kind of stuff. But you know what? We can get some of those folks because it's very interesting because there's another question that we asked on that survey, which I think is extremely enlightening. We've been asking it over the last couple of months. And we said, well, do you agree or disagree? Well, I may not agree with Donald Trump on everything. I like the fact that he puts America and the America people first. 2/3 of Americans agree with that sentiment. They like the fact, and believe it or not, it's over 40% of Democrats, it's over 40% of Kamala Harris voters, and it's over 50% of Black and Hispanic voters. So they like the whole idea about Donald Trump putting America first. And you think about it, what was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Barack Obama before them telling us? They were telling us that, you know what, America's not the greatest country in the world, et cetera. They like the fact that he's putting his country and he's putting his policies are making it about America first. And that's one of the messages that we need to hammer out there with the American people.
Okay, so Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff, reads the latest McLaughlin polling and says, Jim, go get your brother John. And I want you guys to tell me something. I'm reading your poll, and it says that there's a lot of these people who like how President Trump, who are Kamala voters and Democrats and Hispanics and blacks, non-traditional Republican type voters. What do we do? How do we get them? Is it the policy? Is it the tone? Or is it the platform? What do we do to talk to them more?
It's all of the above. And you know what the most important thing is, and Susie understands this better than anyone, is we need to be successful. Because that's what the 2024 election was all about. It was a contrast between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's failed policies versus Donald Trump and his successful policies. And we need to go out there and bang the drum every day, talk about the things that we were doing to make the economy better. Because that, you know, those points you made before, not just for the first time. And remember, nobody in the mainstream media is covering it. Don't you remember? Forget how they're telling us that tariffs were going to cause inflation. They were also telling us it was going to increase the debt and the deficit. And what happened? Just as you said, for the first time in a decade, we actually had a budget surplus. I believe it was a $27 billion surplus for the previous month. And that's the kind of thing we need to keep telling the American people, because, you know, a lot of people are talking about what's going on with the big, beautiful bill. And it's interesting because remember how the media and the Democrats were telling us that, oh, the Republicans are going to have problems with the big, beautiful bill? They've kind of stopped talking about it, because I think what's happened is the Democrats have figured out they just voted against and they opposed a lot of really popular stuff. So if you were a Democrat and you opposed, which they all did, they went in lockstep with whatever, you know, Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer were telling them. They all just supported the largest tax increase in American history on the American people. They voted against more border security. They voted against things like pay raises and more resources for our military. They just opposed some really, really popular stuff. And I think that it's going to cause real problems for the Democrats in the midterm elections.
All right, so let's play out my scenario for a second. Susie says, I hear what you're saying, Jim McLaughlin. I'm going to go get the president. And the president comes in and he says, what do you mean keep doing it? I got a budget surplus. No one had done that in a decade because of the tariff policies that everyone said were going to be horrible. And yet, look at what they've done. I just scored massive amounts of trade deals with countries that have been screwing us. The GDP, the economy is growing faster than anybody predicted. Not only predicted, but everyone said would be failing and faltering. And it went in the opposite way because of my policies. Jim, what more can I do? I've been crushing it. And you keep telling me just keep going? Like, what do I need to do? Do I need to talk about it more? Do I need to do more events? Do I need to fly it around the country and sell it? Do I need to do more interviews? But what does that look like? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I get the thing, but let's take it a step further. And President Trump looks at you and said, what more can I do? Is it that I'm not selling it enough? Is that Jeffrey Epstein is dominate? What is it that's stopping this? Because I did what you told me to do. You know, are you tired of winning yet, Jim McLaughlin? Like, what is it?
And not only that, you know what I thought was great is we've learned now that the president is going to bring back the Presidential Council on Physical Fitness. We all remember taking that test. You might be too young for that, Sean, but I remember taking that test back when I was
Jenner
in grammar
and stuff.
school.
I think, right? Somebody there was some, yeah.
Well, more Maha stuff. We got to keep doing it. But with all that being said, look, nobody understands. There's two things going on there. The first thing is the American people got crushed by Joe Biden's inflation. They just got simply crushed by it. Look, and that was one of the reasons why Donald Trump, I know in his heart of hearts, decided to run again. He saw how Joe Biden was destroying our economy. You know, the 9% inflation in 1 year. I mean, it was just, terrible. And it's going to take time before the American people actually feel it, where they're saying, hey, I've got more money in my pocket now that Donald Trump is president, just like I did the first time. And he's got to keep hammering that message through to the American people. And he's got to keep being successful. And you look, Donald Trump's plan, because that's one of the things we've seen. When you test the parts of the big, beautiful bill, whether it's no tax on overtime, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, the American people support that overwhelmingly. And what's going to happen is, as the American people start feeling better and better about the economy, and what used to happen was during the campaign, when I would do the focus groups and say, inflation's gone up about 20% since Joe Biden and Kamala Harris got into office, I'd get yelled at by the voters because they'd be telling me 20%. Inflation is up way higher than that. They would tell me, you've been to the grocery store lately? So Susie Wiles and President Trump, they understand the media bias, and they understand how bad the American people got hurt. And I think one of the biggest things, this from having worked hand in hand with President Trump, what does he do all day? He talks to the American people. He talks to people. That's what he does. He talks to small business owners. He talks to, men and women on the street. And that's where he takes his gauge. And he knows that they're still struggling from the economy that was left to us by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden.
Yeah. You mentioned the big, beautiful bill in the midterms. And there was a memo that the National Republican Congressional Committee, the NRCC, put out to its members. And it said, Democrats are fear-mongering about Republican efforts to strengthen Medicaid, but we can't let them control the narrative. Voters back Republicans' common sense reform. 86% support removing deceased and ineligible recipients. 72 support work requirements. And 71 believe that there's widespread fraud in Medicaid. So as you're advising these members of Congress who are maybe a little skittish about promoting the bill, how should they address it? Should they take it head on and say, you know what, guys, be proud of what you did on Medicare because you're reforming it? Or should they talk? I mean, look, none of those provisions, by the way, at least come until 2028. So any attack isn't even real. So do you want to basically say this is a ridiculous attack because nothing in Medicaid changes until 2028? Or do you want to focus on the fact that, here's everything that we did in terms of reforms?
Yeah, no, it's both of those things. Look, you can't let the Democrats' lies go unchallenged when it comes to the issue of Medicaid. And the interesting part about it was, in that national poll that we just did, we think it was only about 1 or 2% of the electorate were telling us that Medicaid was the most important issue to them. And why? Because they realized that what the Republicans did, it not only didn't cut Medicaid, but what it did was it actually strengthened and protected Medicaid. And that's the big problem that the Democrats have. They have no positive message to give to the American people. They have no successes that they can give to the American people. And look, they've got these crazy radical Marxists in their party, like a Zohran Mamdani who wants to defund the police. He wants to get rid of prisons. And that's what they're trying to defend what I call the indefensible. So we've put ourselves in a great position. And when you do a comparison between the polling now versus President Trump's first midterm, our numbers are extremely better than where they were. We actually had the Republicans up by 5 points in the generic ballot. That's not supposed to be the case. When the Republicans,
now you do, or you did back then?
We've got them up 47 to 42 in the generic ballot. And look, we can still win because of redistricting and whatnot, even if we're down by a couple points in the generic ballot. So we want every day. And I tell people, I say, look, we want to go out there and talk about issues and talk about the contrast between us. Because when you think about it, and you're exactly right, those singular components within the big, beautiful bill are extremely popular. Let's contrast that with what the Democrats want to do. They want to go back to all this crazy, wasteful spending that caused this reckless inflation that is going to threaten whether it's Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Look, dead people shouldn't be on Social Security and Medicare. We know that's waste and fraud. Illegals that people that come into this country illegally, and we're going to give them Medicaid benefits. And meanwhile, we're not giving enough to our veterans. Come on. These are common sense reforms that Donald Trump and the Republicans did. And we need to tell the American people the story about those common sense reforms. I actually wish, the elections, the midterm elections were in the next month or two, because I can't wait till we start litigating this with the American public, because I don't think there's any question the American voters are going to take the side of the Republicans during the midterms.
All right. Well, you put out a tweet with respect to the midterms, and you said President Trump's successes, plural, on the economy, inflation, public safety, immigration, and peace through strength are setting the stage for GOP victories in the midterms. You tagged the president, Scavino, Chung. Let me ask you this. One of the things that's been said in the past is that people will go out and go to the mat for Donald Trump. Hey, he wants, but where we saw, at least in the last time, is that it didn't necessarily translate to Congressman or Congresswoman X. They were like, we'll go to the mat for Trump, but not necessarily for you. So one, is that dynamic changed? And if not, if you're Congressman or Congresswoman X, how do you get people motivated in the same way that they're motivated to go out and vote for Donald Trump?
Oh, Sean, this is why I loved working with you on campaigns back in the day, because you got it. That's what the Republicans have to do in these midterm elections, whether it's Jack Ciattarelli in a place like New Jersey, or whether if people want any chance at beating a Zohran Mamdani in New York City. And remember, we predicted he was going to win the Democratic primary back in June on your show. And it's one of those things where you're going to have to give these casual Trump voters, these voters that are only turning out for Donald Trump in the presidential elections, you need to give them reasons to turn out in these off-year elections and then in these midterm elections. And you've got to remind them all the crazy, insane things that the Democrats stand for. It's funny. You and I used to run campaigns a while back, and we called the Democrats liberals. They're way past being liberals anymore. These people are just, they're crazy and they're insane nowadays. I mean, they want illegal aliens to vote in American elections. They want to go back to the open border policies. You pointed to that memo before. The American people overwhelmingly like what Donald Trump and the Republicans have done to secure the border. They like what that's doing to the country, And you know what I love about that too, Sean, is you've got all these socialist Democratic mayors in the country, across the country, places like Chicago and Eric Adams in New York and the mayor of LA. They're talking about how over the last couple months, how crime has gone down in their cities. Well, what's the only thing that changed? They still do their crazy liberal Soros type policies in those cities. The only thing that's changed is Donald Trump is president right now. And what they're doing is they're getting rid of criminal illegals, and which, by the way, 75% of Americans support that policy. And they want to keep it going. But we cannot be complacent, because we've got to give those what I call those low propensity Trump voters, we've got to give them reasons to turn out and vote for our candidates in the midterms, and also in these elections that we have coming up this November.
So we I've talked about this in the past, right? I mean, obviously elections are choices. So we have our candidates, we have our leader, Donald Trump, and then we've got our leadership in the House, Mike Johnson, et cetera, and then our candidates. And when I look at the other side, and this is the interesting part of the equation, you talk about the generic ballot, random Republican versus random Democrat. But if you start to actually go drill down, you put a face to a name. I look at their faces and I go, Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, Ken Martin, the DNC chair, they're rudderless. They have no leadership. And so part of this, and by the way, mechanically, they're screwed too, Jim, right? This is a national party that's got $15 million in the bank compared to the $80 million for the RNC. And so I guess my question to you is, if you're the Democrats, how concerned are you that like your leaders are feckless and rudderless and without any sense of purpose? And I mean that like in all seriousness, that the Democrats themselves are being very critical of Hakeem Jeffries in the House and Chuck Schumer in the Senate, because you have to beat someone with someone. And right now, that's where I think that Republicans have a huge advantage, both mechanically, that the Democratic Party isn't going to be able to fund the necessary get out the vote efforts, et cetera, but also that the people at the top of their ticket are feckless. They're not excited to be like, yay, Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah. The interesting part is what you see is, whether it's Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer. Now, there's a good chunk of the electorate that still doesn't know who they are, but the people that do know who they are, they don't like them. And really, the truth is, the real leaders of the Democratic Party right now are the Socialist squad. It's AOC, it's Jasmine Crockett. And you look at somebody like Cory Booker, and you look what he did the other day when he was yelling and screaming. That's what's happened to the Democratic Party. And, I remember Cory Booker when he was first running in Newark as the mayor, running for mayor of Newark. He was running on things like school choice. He was running on things like being tough on crime. Now he's trying to fight to get more to the left than the socialist Marxist wing of the Democratic Party is. And that's that's the real leadership. Unfortunately, it's the Zohran Mamdanis of the world. It's the AOCs of the world. And unfortunately, they're following their failed policies. And that's the biggest problem. I tell people all the time, I say, you know what? If you're a Republican, you can you can point to all these popular Republican governors like a Ron DeSantis in Florida or Sarah Huckabee Sanders in a place like Arkansas. And even in our cities, somebody like a Mayor Francis Suarez in Miami, which Miami is basically the best run major city in the country. And the Democrats, what are you going to say? Gavin Newsom? Oh, he's doing a bang up job in California. I can't wait till he tries to run for president. Or you're going to look at a Kathy Hochul or Pritzker in Illinois. They've all failed. And the only people worse than them are their urban liberal city mayors that have been even bigger failures.
Yeah. All right. The one last thing I want to touch on with you is I'm about to have a conversation with Ryan Girdusky about this whole redistricting thing. And I'm a little concerned, and maybe it's just my nature. So like everybody just needs to understand I'm kind of a worrier by nature, but like I get what they're trying to do, especially in Texas, push out full 5 seats. The question that I have for you is on the polling front. Are we confident enough that the Hispanic vote that came out to support Donald Trump, that switched over to him, is going to stay with us? Or are we in like a cycle or two going to be going, what did we do in Texas? These guys are Trump voters, but they're not necessarily Republican voters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, it's a great point. And look, I look at it this day.
I was hoping for a little bit more confident response there, Jim.
Look, I give Hispanic voters a ton of credit. Remember, what was it? Mitt Romney got about, I don't even know if he got a quarter of the Hispanic vote back in the day when he was running for president.
No.
And now you had basically Donald Trump, tying basically even with the Hispanic voters. A state like Florida, it looks like we got like 56%, 57% of the Hispanic vote. Stark County in Texas, as you said, Barack Obama won it with about 60%. Donald Trump just won it about 80%. It's 90% Hispanic county. So look, we've got to go out there and fight for those Hispanic voters. We can't stop. We can't be complacent with them. And they become the ultimate swing group. I mean, who would have thought, when you and I were first working for Donald Trump back in the very beginning, who would have thought, hey, we're trying to not just do better with Hispanic voters, we're trying to win with them. And to the Hispanic,
Jim, this isn't making me feel better. I'm sorry. Donald Trump got it, right? He got it, but Congressman X or Y. Like, to me, like that doesn't make me feel good. Like, they're stretching to get 5 seats out of Texas. And I'm going to talk to Ryan about this in a second. But if we're wrong on this, yes, it'll be fine for Trump necessarily. But then as a party, have we put Texas in play for more seats?
Yep. And look, I am not an expert on the redistricting stuff, but I will tell you this. Think about it. I look at it this way. Who did the Democrats put in charge of their whole redistricting thing? They basically had Obama doing it, raising the money. He's a former attorney general, Eric Holder. And then, you had guys like Mark Elias and, from kind of the dark side in the Democratic Party. They were all involved in that too. But look, there's a lot smarter guys than I am on this that are doing it.
Right. But all I'm asking you is, from a polling standpoint, are these Hispanic voters that are getting crammed into these districts, are they ours to continue to do well with, or are they Trump voters that are going to be with Donald Trump until he leaves in 2028?
I believe we can continue to do well with those Hispanic voters because of the successes of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And I can't tell you how many times, Sean, and I think you and I have talked about this a little bit, where they would tell you, because they did not like the Democrats, policies. And by the way, the Hispanic voters are, they overwhelmingly want criminal illegals to get taken out of the country. They overwhelmingly want them to be deported. I can't tell you how many times they told us in the focus groups, I came here for the American dream. I came here to be an American. So I think we have the ability, as well as we did with them in the presidential election, because of the failures and the extremism of the Democrats. I think we have the potential. We got to fight for it, but we have the potential to actually do even better with Hispanic voters in the future.
Okay. That's a perfect place to end it. Jim McLaughlin, thanks as always for being with us and sharing your insights.
Sean, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks, brother. Love the conversation with Jim. Now let's figure out whether or not we can pick up more seats as we head into those midterms, understanding the redistricting play with Ryan Girdusky. Ryan, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to this conversation all week because I just talked to Jim McLaughlin. I'm a little nervous about Texas. I feel like we could have gotten 3. It's very Trump. It's like, why go for 3 when you can get 5? And the question I have just out of the gate, like, how concerned should we be about whether or not we squeeze too much out of this?
Well, I mean, to get 2 was easy. I could have done 2 with a crayon and one of those placemats you see at a diner. The thing about doing 5 is that you really have to bet that the Latino vote is not going to have a recession for Republican support the way that it had in several other elections. And you have to hope that the new kind of baseline for Latino support in Texas is around 45 to close to 50%. That's a big bet. Certainly with the Tejano support, I think there seems consistency. With other groups, you're not exactly so sure. I think that the 5 number is a little on the riskier side, and I think that the retaliatory fears from other states is also on the risky side. The bigger question is Republicans could have won 2 if they didn't change the map, right? I think Vicente Gonzalez and Henry Cuellar were slated to lose in southern Texas, basically because the districts had moved past the Democratic Party. The other 3 districts, if it brings other states to do redistricting and there is a rescission of Latino support and we don't win all 3 of them, was the juice worth the squeeze? I'm not exactly so sure. And, for all the conversations that we've had about, not we, but the media has had that, oh, look how partisan gerrymandered Republican states are. We didn't start, I think it's important to put in this context, we did not start this fire. Illinois, Maryland, California, everything Kathy Hochul tried and failed to do in New York as she overstepped her bounds has shown that the Democrats will stop at nothing to redistrict. You're a student of history, so I'll bring this up to you. The Democrats have used redistricting in the census, after the census, for decades to hold Republicans from winning more House seats. In 1991, you know how many House seats Republicans controlled in redistricting?
52.
5.
What?
2 in New Hampshire, the 3 in Utah. Democrats had a lock on redistricting for decades, absolute decades of complete control between the Democratic Southern states and, landslide losses in some preceding years that mattered. I don't blame Republicans for doing this after what we've seen Republicans do. I don't think that it's necessarily good for our democracy as a whole. And I worry about that these baseline Trump numbers will hold in a midterm election.
Okay, so let's just stick with Texas for a second, and then I want to broaden this out. So we could have here. Let's just level set this. We probably could have picked up 2 without changing the map. Fair?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and nothing would, because the Cuellar seat and the other one would have just, by demographics and the fact that like Henry Cuellar is being prosecuted, probably would have helped us. So, okay.
Bob Menendez, and Santos, the 3 big members of Congress who spend time in jail together, allegedly.
I wonder if they maybe they could all get one, like a group or something.
That's
like
a reality. House. That's a podcast from
a group house, like Fed house. I don't know. Well, we'll think on that one. But when they pushed, here's the thing that was amazing to me. I haven't, when I was at the NRCC back in 2000 or whatever, you heard members, I like to say the word squeal on both sides, like Democrats in states where Democrats were trying to get more seats, or Republicans, same thing, where they were like, because, some Republican member has a 70% district, going down to 60 might mean that they actually have to show up a little and do some work. So they would squeal, I don't like this map. This map isn't good. I haven't heard anyone from Texas, at least publicly, squeal that they're concerned. That initially, and not just initially, but continues to be, to me, a tell that there's not a sense of like, hey, you're screwing with my district. None of the current incumbents, at least that I can tell publicly, have expressed dismay.
Right. Publicly, I haven't heard anything. Privately, I've heard they've been a little annoyed by it, because you could run for re-election on $300,000 and not really have to worry. I think that there are probably 3 of these new seats that are 3 seats total that are competitive, and the 28 or 29 total Republicans that are going to be fine. They'll be safe. That it won't matter. All 28 incumbent Republicans will be fine, so it won't matter.
So if you're one of the 28 that currently is in office, there's nothing that's being done that you really have to worry about. Is that what you're saying?
That's basically it. There's not really. I mean, Beth Van Dyne's district, maybe it'd be a stretch, but no, I think all the changes really come from the new districts that they're trying to make, and they're trying to make these new districts. The Cuellar seat, the Vicente Gonzalez seats are like now Trump plus 15. There was enough room.
So they're gone. They're gone. No matter what, even if they don't go to jail, they're just not going to win.
They're just not going to win. And the Vicente Gonzalez and there was enough with Maya Flores' district and Chip Roy's district to take pieces here and there. It's the Houston seat, the Austin seat, and the Dallas seat that really sit there and cause worry for concern. And this is now if we have 2 more elections, 26, 28, and 30 in this district, right? There's 3 more elections. Parts of Texas are the fastest growing in the country, especially in the Austin area and in the Houston area. Dallas is not growing as fast as the other 2, but that whole region is growing immensely fast. There's no telling that these seats will not be more competitive in 2 to 4 years. I don't know. I think that privately Republicans in Texas are feeling. I think here's the bigger question. I'd like to ask you this, Sean. What would they rather do? Have to show up or still be in the majority next year? That's the question that they're asking themselves.
Be a chair or vice subcommittee chair or be in the minority.
Yeah. Would I rather be in the minority or have to show up in my own district actually 6 times a year instead of going to Florida, which is what half of them do anyway?
I had Brianna Lyman on the show, and she said that there was this Galveston case that really set a spark off in this. Is there anything to that?
I have not heard that was setting anyone off. No. Okay. Maybe she's right, but I don't know it.
Right. So, I mean, again, I think that, so let's just play this out for and then move on. But the worst case scenario under this now is what?
The worst case scenario for Republicans under this is that either they can't get it done, right? Because they
let's just say they get it done. I mean,
okay, so worst case scenario, they get it done. I read a poll today that showed that 50% of Latinos who voted for Biden and then voted for Trump, 50% of that group were considering voting for Democrats in 2026, right?
Okay.
That there was a natural decision, not 100%, but 50%. So the trajectory towards Republicans continues, but it's going to go, it's like a roller coaster. It's not a complete thing. It's going to have bumps and valleys. If we're in a valley and Democrats have a tough year, and I'll just say if Ken Paxton's the nominee, and it's $1 billion race in Texas, with Democrat turnout being what midterms have been like in 18, and the map goes from Trump plus 15 to, Paxton or whoever plus 2, yeah, you're going to see some houses in deep, deep trouble and money being spent in Texas from candidates that I don't think know how to campaign in competitive general elections. I mean, that's the worst case scenario.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that. I coined a phrase that I've said before called political atrophy, where members who've been in office for 20 years have forgotten how to utilize a political apparatus, the apparatus that got them elected in the first place. They just haven't had to use it. It's like a muscle at the gym. If you don't work it out. And so you're going to have political atrophy from a lot of these people who haven't faced a re-election in 10, 15, 20 years. They haven't raised a ton of money. They don't know how to do it anymore. Okay. Is this the new norm though? Like, you know what I mean? Like where we used to do it every 10 years and that was it. And now I feel like the new cool thing is every couple of years, you're right. The Democrats tried this in New York. The courts, ironically, considering they controlled them, shut them down. Is this just going to be the new thing where everybody figures once I get control of all the chambers in my state legislature, we're going for it?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of Republican states who have refused to do this. Like Nebraska is not moving, really. Indiana is not moving on this. Doesn't look like Kentucky's moving because Kentucky can knock off one Democratic seat. Indiana could knock off one, if not both. They could shore up the Don Bacon seat in Nebraska for sure. In Kansas, Kansas, they don't have the governorship. But if they have a governorship, they could certainly make that one district in Kansas. There's in New Hampshire. They could make a Republican seat in New Hampshire for sure. But they don't. So I think that the amount of states willing to do this so far, North Carolina did it in the redistricting. Ohio seems like they're going that way. Texas did it. There's not that many states really willing to sit there and go further, right? There's also the question of the Voting Rights Act and make things VRA compliant. There's a lot of states we could have all Republican seats in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and South Carolina, and take a seat off of the table in Georgia, if not 2 seats actually in Georgia. And we just can't because of the VRA. So there's those things holding back from every state kind of doing it, both political willpower on the Republican side and the VRA in some states.
And also, don't some constitutions prevent it? I mean, some of the states literally say you can't do it until.
Yeah. Well, that's like New Jersey. New Jersey's constitution says you cannot do it, right? And other states like New York, there was a constitutional amendment around independent redistricting that the people voted for. They tried to repeal it, and I think in 2022, it went down in flames. The repeal went down by 11 points in New York, of all places. California has the same as I think Schwarzenegger put it in back, a decade and a half ago. So a lot of these Democrat states that want to sit there and do this mass redistricting, they really can't.
Doesn't Gavin Newsom say that he's going to? Does that mean he'll just defy the law? Like,
Sean, he's running for president. He's got to be the guy who can beat up Trump.
I know, but at some point, I think he looks useless if he says we can do it and then he fails. It actually looks worse than trying. I mean, like if he tells everyone we can do this, and then doesn't do anything, it's gonna look like a political loss.
He has also said he was going to abolish homelessness in San Francisco. I mean,
wait, so he didn't? He didn't do that?
Listen, never let good packaging let you make you understand that the toy inside is really bad. Like,
okay, I just after he said that, Ryan, I was like, I just assumed homelessness was gone. My bad. Okay, that's on me. That is on me. I will admit I did not follow up. I just thought it was done. It was gone.
If you look at the Democratic states where the Democrats have the pure political power to do this by muscle alone, right? New Mexico, all Democrats anyway. Oregon, only one Republican. They gerrymandered every other seat. Illinois, gerrymandered every seat besides 3 Republicans. Can't do it anymore. The whole Northeast, all Democrats. Maryland is the only place with a Republican seat, and they kind of can't. I guess they can kind of just, but they're not going to do anything with that one seat.
Andy Harris is trapped. I mean, at some point, You literally have to move that guy out into the ocean if you want to get rid of Andy Harris.
Well, you have to sit there and use that one bridge. Basically, there's a bridge that connects the rest of Maryland to Andy Harris's district, and that bridge has to sit there and be. So you have to split the bridge in 3 different directions. I mean, that's how hard they have to sit there to go after Andy Harris. But of all the seats in all the states, I think there's only 5 current Republicans in a state that Democrats don't have full redistricting control. So what are they going to do anymore? I mean, they can go through the court process. They can try to get their constitutions changed. They can fight over this. Good luck. It's going to take you a couple years. And there's a very good chance that both the voters reject these constitutional amendments, because it happened in blue states before, and that the judges just throw them out. And you spend millions of dollars trying to get that even done. In California, I know there's members of the California Assembly who are Democrats who said flat out, we're not doing this gerrymander stuff. We're not doing it. And the California Democratic congressman said they'll go for it, but you have to let us draw the lines, which they don't want that to happen either.
Yeah, they're like, no, we'll do it. All right, so it sounds to me, we got Texas, it's going forward for the most part. Democrats, it doesn't sound like there's much that they can do. Just quickly, what are the Republican additional opportunities? I hear Ohio, I hear Florida. What's real?
Oh, well, real talk is Ohio, because that you could pick up 3 Democrat seats, the Marcy Kaptur seat, the Cincinnati-based seat, and the seat just south of Cleveland. All could be Republican with the blink of an eye. Now, the judges...
Okay, so and?
Well, I mean, I've heard they're moving forward, but the judges in the state are much more moderate than the legislature is. So who knows if they're going to get it done, because their maps were thrown out last time by the judges. So we'll wait and see what that goes on. Florida, it doesn't look like, listen, DeSantis put together a magnificent map in the 2020 election. I don't know if he's willing, after the 2020 election. In 2021, the map that DeSantis put forward for the congressional seats was more bullish than most people expected. They can knock off Debbie Wasserman Schultz, which would be so great. They could knock off the Jewish Democrat from Southern Florida, whose name now just slipped my mind because I'm thinking Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They could knock him off very, very easily. It will come to me probably 20 minutes after this.
I was thinking Wexler, but he's gone.
No, it's not.
I know, but I was just going through those districts.
It's like the Palm Beach, Miami area. Anyway, there's 2 in South Florida they could get rid of. There's a seat south of Orlando that they could easily get rid of, that large, almost triangular looking seat. I forget who represents it. And they could absolutely get rid of now, which is incredible. They can get rid of the St. Petersburg Democrat seat. So there's easily seats that they could just draw out right there without blinking an eye, because Florida, is to the races with how Republican it's becoming. They're going to make Alabama look like a blue state pretty soon. Indiana could, probably won't. Kentucky could. Oh, actually, there's no Democratic governor. They can't. Right. Indiana could, but they probably won't. New Hampshire could, probably won't, because they could draw New Hampshire 1 into a Republican seat, probably a Trump +7 seat that make it really competitive, but they probably won't. Those are the 2 other big states I can think of.
All right. Well, this is super helpful. Ryan, I really appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us. And I'd love to get you back as we progress through this process. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, guys, an unbelievable conversation. Thanks for being with us. We got a great lineup next week. Harmeet Dillon's kicking it off on Monday. Todd Lyons from the ICE director on Tuesday. Go to SeanSpicer.com. I got a brand new column out today, SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for it. Have a great weekend. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you back here on Monday. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.